Hello, Jean.
Hi everyone.
Hello. Hello, Helen. Sarah. Hello, Sarah.
Hi, sorry, I've not got my right name up.
That's all right. Hello, Elaine. Hello, Elaine. Elaine, can you hear us?
I can, yes. Now.
Okay.
Good evening.
Yeah, we can hear you now.
I'm going to put my light on. I look like I'm in the dark here.
Okay. Hello, Julie Wilkinson. Yeah. Hello, Julie Wilkinson. We can see you, Julie, but we can't hear you. So you're still on mute. Hello, Adam. Well, one or two people, Jilly, I don't know whether you can hear us, but you're still on mute. It's better. I think I'm beginning to see everybody at the moment. Hello, Adam. Still not replying, but it's just gone 7 o'clock. So for all of those who, I'm hoping you can hear me on that. Some of you will know me. My name's Simon Plater. I'm chairman of Tollesbury Parish Council. And Helen, is it Tideswell?
Tidswell.
Tidswell, fine. Okay, sorry about that. But Helen is here on behalf of Lewis Scott Retirement and Living Limited. And I think Helen's going to run us through the scheme or talk about the scheme. I'm assuming that is the case, Helen, on that. Just to put you in the picture, in the overall picture, I think at the moment we have 3 parish councillors, although we are expecting possibly at least 2 others. We are expecting 1 district councillor, Emma Stevens, although she hasn't arrived yet, but she did say that she was coming on that. And what I'd like to do is to basically aim for the meeting to run on about an hour and a quarter. to 8:15, 8:30. Otherwise, I think we'll all glaze over on that. And what I'd like to do is to ask Helen to introduce the scheme to us, point out whatever information that she would like to explain the scheme on that. Then I'd like it to be opened up to parish councillors first to ask any questions on that, and then lastly I'll open it up to the whole of the public who are here, and we think there's going to be about 5 or 6 members of the public, Helen, on that, although we haven't got as many people as I thought we have at the moment, but they may well join us on that. So it's just 7:05, so I think, Helen, if you wouldn't mind, if you'd like to introduce yourself, and then Michelle, do you want to share the screen, Helen? Do you want to put up?
No, I thought
Sorry?
I would talk and not rely on PowerPoint for a change. And I know that you guys have seen the documentation and the videos online. I think most people have seen that as well by this point. So I thought, because Michelle mentioned to me it would be a general discussion, and I wasn't really sure of the format or the agenda. So I thought if I cover some of the key bases, introduce the company, what we're trying to achieve, some of the principles of the development, and then could speak to any questions that you have.
Okay. I'd just like to know from the parish councillors, have you all seen the plans? I mean, I've got copies of them here on that, but Roy, Jolene, yes, thumbs up. Sarah's thumbs up. Yeah, and welcome Andrew Gilbert on that. So the others aren't here yet. So Helen, if I can hand over to you then, first of all, to begin to explain, the company, etc.
Yeah, and thank you everyone for your time. I really appreciate it, especially in the evening. And just to confirm, as it's public, I know you're going to be making it available, but I thought if it's okay, I'll record it as well, because I know some of the people on Facebook who couldn't make it asked if I could do that so that I could upload the recording. So presumably that's okay?
That's fine. Yeah.
Great. So I thought, with it being a general discussion, I wasn't really sure how long you want me to talk for, that I'd sort of start quite high level and not rely on anyone to have gone through the material. I thought that might be the best option. I suppose I would like to preface what I'm going to talk about with the fact that I'm really aware that there's 3 words that you hear all the time from developers, and that is, we are different. And if there was a slogan that could characterise them, that would be it. My aim this evening is to demonstrate that that is actually true in our case, and to talk through what we're doing differently, why this is not just another scheme, why we're not just another developer. So first of all, I would make the point that I'd really like to underpin is that Lewis and Scott was created with one simple goal in mind, which was to address a critical need, which is the national shortage of specialist housing for older people. It's a national issue, and we are geared up to impact the majority of people who are affected, which is the middle market, which the central government defines as those who earn at or below the national retiree income. So it's that middle income. You've got wealthy people who have choice. They can move into something like a McCarthy and Stone. They can upgrade their property. They can maintain their grounds and outsource. You have less wealthy people who might be eligible for social rent or different options. But there's this big tranche in the middle, 70%, which is consistent with the ONS Poppy data for Tollesbury, 70% in Tollesbury, 71% in Malden district wider, that fall into that category. Their wealth is in the equity in the properties. And we're talking about traditional 2-3 bed properties, and we've looked at all the data, and I'll speak to that a little bit this evening. But actually, in terms of income and cash, these people aren't wealthy, and that makes up the majority of older people. So what we're seeing is the people that occupy these houses nationally, sort of taking an overview for a sec, they tend to stay in traditional housing long past when it becomes suitable. And I'm not trying to generalise, but the research shows that for a lot of people, as they go past their 60s, into their 70s and 80s, having a 2-storey home with multiple bedrooms, possibly a large garden, is quite a lot to maintain. And also, we see that falls are the main reason for hospitalisation in that age group, and myriad causes like that. So we asked ourselves, what is it that stops people moving? Why is this happening? Why are people waiting until there's a critical event, typically in late 70s, and that can be disease or bereavement, and why are they waiting for that point to make that change? And as a group of people, we isolated this down, working with people like Centre for Ageing, looking at government reports, talking to thought leaders, and it's about lack of choice, lack of affordability, and lack of options that are local, not wanting to leave friends and family and the places that they love. So we had personal experiences of this, and myself and the group that comprise Lewis and Scott, and we're a new company. Through me, it was my parents who were looking to make that change and realising there weren't any options, and their hopes to release equity just weren't practical. For Rob Scott, who's the CEO, it was grandparents on both sides who were suffering from alienation and trapped in a flat without a usable lift. So we're a group of people that we have a track record in construction and building traditional bungalows, traditional retirement homes, but all of us through conversation has started to question independently and then together, this market feels broken. There feels like there's a lack of options on what's happening. There isn't the stock for local authorities. There aren't developers offering options for local authorities. And we said, actually, we want to get together, we want to do something fundamentally different, we want to address this issue, and that's when we created Lewis and Scott. So the main things to know about us is that we're pro-social, we're soon to be certified as a B Corp. We aren't motivated by profit, we are motivated by meeting local need, designing communities, housing for the local people and with them. So collaborating with them, making sure that the homes that we build meet people's budgets, meet their aspirations, and that we're doing it in the right places, and we're doing it with people. We're not just doing it, going to an area and saying, okay, we're going to develop here and we're going to sell far and wide. This is just for local people. Mainly single story. We've got a variety of house types which you'll see in our plans, and it's a completely different way of living. And what we're hoping to do fundamentally, and we know it won't happen overnight, we want people to make that choice earlier in life, not wait till the average in the UK is 79, average life expectancy is 82. So leaving it to the last minute when formal care tends to be required, when care homes become maybe the option, or very, very expensive flatted accommodation with very high fees become the option. We want people to make that change earlier, have the opportunity to do equity release if that's available to them, to live basically happier, healthier, more independent lives. So is it okay if I sort of go into some of the key principles about how we're making that happen? And then when you look at the scheme, I think it will make more sense.
Yep, please do.
So the first thing I want to emphasise is the local aspect, because this is the foundation of the whole company. Rather than, we aren't a group of people who want to build houses for older people and say, okay, how do we make that work? We started with, how do we address this social issue and create genuine change? And the absolute foundation is keeping it local. As I've said, the main reason that people stay in unsuitable housing, and you can look at the work of people like Professor Anna Dixon, and see this, it's friends, family and familiar surroundings. By moving people away, and this is what happened in our families, moving out of the village which they know, moving away from friends and familiar surroundings, it can exacerbate mental health conditions, psychological conditions, physical conditions, because it's taking away the familiarity. It's weakening connections. We see children relying on, like myself relying on my mum for childcare, and vice versa. She relies on me for certain things. And we are very, very loath to break that connection. So when you're making that change, you want to stay close. And you look at people like the University of Stirling, who are leading the research and the work on older people ageing well in relation to property and housing, and they call it ageing in place. And they talk about the multiple benefits of preventing illnesses like Alzheimer's, which I'll talk about, and dementia, But also, if it does occur, if cognitive decline is occurring, and we know obviously it can begin very early on in life relatively, it can slow it down and people can stay independent for longer. So the people that we're talking to are already in the location. So for Salt Meadows, which is the name of the development we're proposing in Tollesbury, we are working with people in Tollesbury. It's for them, people who are already in the village. So these are not new people coming in. They need to meet the eligibility criteria, which is over 60. They need to be in the middle bracket, which is determined by income levels. And so we're not introducing new people, and they get to stay where they love, in the place that they love. So it has to be local. Now, linked to that is the fact about affordability. Now, our definition of affordability is actual genuine affordability for that group of people that we talked about. And with the local aspect, and just to be clear, it's not about intent. The marketing plan is enshrined in the legal documentation around our planning proposal. It would be part of our planning permission that we had to market to local people. And through the work we've done, and we've been talking to local people for over a year now because we've kind of flipped. We talk to people before we commit to a location. We have enough people who qualify in Tollesbury to sell the development, the 29 homes, 2 times over at least. And we could grow that, but we don't feel that's right to do until we're closer. So affordability dovetails with the local aspect. First and foremost, the homes are discounted by 20% of market value. And that's because we're working with a landowner who believes in what we're doing and wants to do specialist retirement accommodation. We also look at what local people can afford, because if they can't afford it and we've committed to only market to local people, it fails. So we have a commercial as well as an ethical obligation to make those two things work. So we look through Experian data, and again, this is something I can take you through, probably be another meeting. We've created a bespoke platform with Experian. We contrast with ONS data, with Poppy data, put all of the nationally received data into it, and we look at how much equity have people got in their homes, what kind of tenure are they working to, is it mostly rental, mostly freehold, and in Tollesbury we saw freehold as the dominant paradigm. And we say, okay, what would these houses that we intend to build need to cost in order to make it affordable? And those two things have to marry. And when we're talking to people in the build up to putting in a planning application, which we do for a year as I mentioned, we say that figure and say, how does this feel? Is this something you could do? It's also worth mentioning that we look at the cost of mostly bungalows because it's the nearest comparable stock. We look at how many they are, we look at the older ones, what's the cost to do them up, and we try and look at all of these factors to make sure that we're coming in at the right price point. And we can do that to a large extent because we're not building big bungalows full of redundant space like big long corridors on big plots, few and far between on the outskirts. What we're doing is creating efficient house types, and we're also building 1 and 2 bedrooms primarily, with additional bedrooms for carers, for grandchildren, for hobby rooms, but mostly 1 and 2 bedrooms. So it's a different kind of property. And we discount them because, of course, a brand new bungalow commands a premium, so we need to overcome that. So we make sure we can get to the right ballpark by putting those factors together. And then we also look at the third component of affordability, which is the annual service charge. Now, we have done analysis, as you'd expect, of competitors, and I will take McCarthy and Stone as an easy example. You're looking at in excess of £3,000 a year for the service charge. Now, it's a different proposition, but still that's quite high, and it's not really accessible to someone in the mid-market for whom this is a freehold purchase. What we've looked at, we think we can bring it in on circa £600 a year, £50 a month. And as I'll go through, that would encompass land maintenance, it would help them with things like waste disposal. Different people have different needs, some might not need any help. It also includes a social hub, a community building, which is in the plans, which can be used. It's not something they have to pay for. It can be a place for coffee, and we would have mornings run there. We would look to get a community of residents who would take ownership of that. We'd look to have fitness classes. We're talking to the local GP practice about doing things like vaccinations. We're talking to the local shops about do they want to do pop-ups so they can go there, and we can use it in different ways. And it hopefully takes on a life of its own, and we have someone there. And we have a management company to take care of that, because again, that's something we thought about. This is a development that has to look as good in 40, 50, 60 years as it does now. And we've got people who are going to become older, maybe less able to take care of the properties. So we've decided that it's so important that we actually want to make sure that we're part of that company rather than outsourcing it to an FM company. So the discount, we've got 100% freehold, there is no rent to pay on our model, and there's full details of it on our website, and there's an annual service charge which is reasonable and controlled. And then the last aspect I really want to focus on before we sort of open up and we can ask questions is the beautiful aspect of it. And one of the things you'll hear me talk about a few times is dementia-friendly design. And the reason I will use this is not because this is an exclusive development for dementia, or I think this is, we have figures that talk about upwards of, I think they say it's currently, let me double check, we've got 50% in Tollesbury of people projected to have dementia by 2040 or some life-limiting long-term illness. And just to clarify, I know that sounds really alarming, although the figures do look pretty alarming. Dementia is not a disease in itself, it's a term that's used to talk about Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, cognitive decline, and if you design to that standard, which is effectively the gold standard, I know I'm talking to an architect now, but for the benefit of the public, it covers mobility issues, it covers sight and hearing loss, it also covers social isolation and depression. And so it has, if you design to that standard, and we're also aiming M2 compliant throughout, which is wheelchair accessible, but we're currently working on bringing that to M4-3, which means you can live a full and independent life with a wheelchair. So if we design to that, then everything between, everything that affects older people, and we hope it won't, but we know it's very likely will, is covered. So in terms of beautiful, we are working to Sterling University. They've just audited the plans for Salt Meadows, and we've got an excellent report, and we're going to publish that. We're just waiting for their permission to publish that on our website, which we'll be doing this week. And they've talked about some of the good stuff we're doing. They've also put in a raft of recommendations that they think we could go even better and go into best practice with. And we're going to be looking to implement them. And we're working with Malden District Council, with their planning team, and we have been now for over 6 months, with the affordable officers, with the urban designers, to get that scheme. So the scheme is evolving even as we go through this process to get better and better. So that gives you a bit of an idea. Now, the homes are mostly single story. The kind of characteristics they have are all in keeping with dementia-friendly principles, but they are principles of excellent design. You'll see that the windows are incredibly large on our site. You see a lot of new builds where they have very tiny little windows, and we know that light values affects mental health of every age, and in particular this group. You'll look at the ceiling heights. We have got vaulted ceilings, lots and lots of space in all of them. We have open plan, and that's a recommendation from Sterling University that we remove corridors. They're not very accessible, they're quite expensive because you end up paying for them, and they make spaces harder to navigate with a wheelchair. So we're creating an open plan environment. We're putting in 2 bathrooms in most properties because we're thinking about things like dignity as well as guests. We are looking at things like storage because we are sort of making the big bungalow, we're sort of taking some of the fat out of it to make it affordable, but we're also looking at the practicalities. We're looking at kitchen design, and we're working with interior designers who are specialists in this field, and that's the next thing we're going to release is plans for that. And again, it's all feeding into our planning application. And we're also, we're looking, we have carports, because it's really important for people to be able to get from their car to their home, or the mobility scooter to their home undercover, creates more safety, light, thresholds. These things are all being taken into consideration. Another really, really important aspect, and I will pause soon, I promise, can't be so soon, is your orientation. So when you look at the scheme, Lewis and Scott communities, they're small. And in Tollesbury Salt Meadows, we're looking at 29 dwellings, and some of these will be maisonettes, so they'll be 2-storey because we have to hit that affordable price point. We're trying to look at properties, bringing them in at sort of sort of 230, 250, and we have to do that and be quite clever how we make it off the widest spectrum. But what you'll also see is that they're organised around gardens, and that's called the pocket neighbourhood principle. And the idea is that the way that they're orientated is they face onto these shared spaces, so they're landscape led, not traffic led, and that makes safer spaces, and it encourages community. You'll also see we've got things like all the houses have got like a hierarchy from the interior private space to a sizable veranda, and the idea is to encourage people out, because I don't know about your experiences, but certainly I live on a housing estate in Colchester, so not far, and there are older people here who live at the back of their houses with the blinds closed all day long because they're afraid. And what we're trying to do is encourage people to make that step and come out and have dinner out on the veranda. Then they have some private garden, and I'll speak to that in a minute, and then there's a shared garden, and you can see each other. So you have that option to be private, but you also have that natural surveillance. And I know that's something that's been raised, and something we're working to is gold standard on security. And in terms of the gardens are, I would say, as important as the homes themselves. So you've got small clusters of properties, so you feel that you are in a small neighbourhood. This is not long streets. It's very defensible. We're talking about a 4-acre plot, most of which is devoted to landscaping, and the whole development will be fully landscaped with mature planting, and that's long before anyone moves in. It'll be the first thing that we do. And we have worked with Lockhart Garrett, who are award-winning landscape architects, and they've already submitted the plans for Tollesbury Meadows, believe it or not, to the Institute of Landscaping into the award, so they're so proud of it. And it's again about dementia-friendly, sensory, therapeutic principles, working with local biodiversity, and we are going to increase nut diversity. If you know the area that we're talking about, north of Woodrolf Road, we've got some good woodland, which we're retaining and improving, and that is the top left of the site, I think in like northwest, and that will have a woodland walk that comes through it. So when you see our video, you'll see that it actually towards the end goes through, and there's someone sitting, and there's a little train feature, and that's a milestone that we're putting in. And again, I know I'm sort of bombarding you with information, but it helps for dementia friendly to give people landmarks so they know where they are and they can organise. And it's just character, and it harks back to the railway that used to run through this site. So we're going to build up and improve and commit to the whole in perpetuity. It's part of what we're doing, that woodland. And then we've got some really awful wooded areas, and what we're effectively doing there, they're basically dying. We've done the full reports on everything, and again, unlike most developers, we don't choose a bit of land and then go in and see what we can do with it. We worked all of this out beforehand, so with Malden Council, they've got everything that they need. We're replacing where we need to, putting more mature trees in, and we're creating those big spaces, so the pergola that you see in the video, all that planting, the water feature, the lake that we're putting in, the wildflower meadow, all of it, the rainwater gardens, the trees, they'll all be in place. And I talked about the social hub. So hopefully that gives you an idea. And I think that water feature, again, we know that there's an issue with water on this site. There is in the entire area. And I expect going to have questions on that, which I can answer specifically. But we've turned it into a feature, and it's going to be a beautiful lake, and it's going to sit around that social hub. And we just think it's just going to make it a lovely place to live. So I just say in closing, I know that's a bit of a whistle stop, and we can sort of dig into the detail now. But for us, and I know again, I'm we're just meeting, but it's been really satisfying because we've been talking to people for over 12 months. We've kind of got to know people, and they've sort of shared their stories and what they're trying to do, and they've commented on our plans. And if you go through our Facebook feed, it's all there. You can see that where we've started to where we are now, it's advanced, and we're actually moving, working with Malden Council and with experts, we're actually moving on further and really pushing what can be achieved in the landscaping, in the architecture and the interiors fundamentally. And we've got people that supported us throughout, and what we hope, if we can secure the planning permission for this, we hope that those people who designed it will be the ones who live there, and I think that would be something really special. So I will pause because that's a lot.
Okay, thank you, Helen, for that. as I said earlier, I know Emma and Bob have joined us since then, that I've allowed Helen to do an explanation. Then I was going to open it up to parish councillors and councillors in particular, and then open up to the broader public. If I can just set the scene, and in one sense, what you're proposing is very laudable on that. I mean, there's a lot of key things there that we would like to see in the village. And when we were putting together our neighbourhood plan, retirement homes was fairly high on the requests for that. So it's something that the village has known obviously for a long time. But unfortunately, it wasn't in the location you are talking about on that. The village were fairly adamant that they did not want any further development to the east of the village, mainly for traffic reasons on that, but also the fact that they wanted to keep a green lung between the residential area and the commercial area, shall we say. So in terms of the parish council, in the history of this development or this plot, to date, we have always recommended refusal, mainly on two grounds. One, completely the wrong location. Two, impact of traffic. And three, obviously then the way the development was designed, the bulk mass, etc. on that. But we do have a parish council meeting tomorrow where the scheme will be discussed. And I don't know what the outcome of that is. But if we were looking at consistency, then we would probably, or I would probably say to you, it will get a proposal for a recommendation for refusal. And of course, that's what happened at Malden District Council as well. That on all the schemes that are put forward, they ended up recommending refusal on this site. So there is a history here. And of course, it went to appeal. We are in a slightly different climate at the moment. The other schemes had to go to appeal, and it was won at appeal. But then, because of the financial implications, probably, that it never came forward within the correct time, and the appeal, they lost that planning.
Well, is it all right if I come back to some of those points? I've just made a note. So
yeah, can I just outline on that? I'll allow you to come back to that later on that. So that has been the position of the parish council, and it's also been the position of Malden District Council. Now, in terms of discussions, one would have hoped that you might have come forward a lot sooner, and rather presenting us with a scheme, that you actually talk to us, because probably we would have been saying to you, and this is what we've agreed in the past, and it may change tomorrow night, is that we really do want some retirement accommodation in the village, but it's in the wrong place, and we would have probably pointed you at sites that were in the right place for the village on that. And all the things that you've been talking about, I think, are what we would expect, high quality on everything on that. So in one sense, yes, it's what the village needs. I would have hoped you'd have talked to us sooner, right at the beginning, a year ago. I'd be very interested to know how many people in the village replied to your Facebook page and see all the details of that on that. Because again, some of the quotes you use that sort of reflect somebody somewhere. There is a reference in your report to the town. Somebody says the town needs this, the town needs that. It's not a town. Nobody who lived in the village would actually say it's a town. on it. So one's a little bit sceptical of your the way you've dealt with just Facebook on that. But having said that, I think your architecture is looks good. I think the way you've approached it, I think the standards you're using are excellent. Can I now just throw it open to other members of the parish council? Then I'll come back to you.
Well, I'm just aware that
all the questions.
I'm just thinking I've got about 8 or 9 points there which I'd like to reply to, because otherwise I might lose track and I won't be able to reply to them if that's possible.
Well, let's try it. It's because I'd like you to take notes from all the comments that the councillors are talking about, and then answer them all in at one point.
It might become a little unmanageable, so if you could just bear with me a little bit. So if I could just work through these, and then if everyone, I might actually go through some of the things councillors, but I don't get another list, so I can do the same. That would be great. So the traffic. So with traffic, I totally understand that the previous development was for 4-bedroom houses, traditional houses, 3 and 4 beds, big ones. And so I could understand why that might cause additional traffic. Now, we've had obviously the Highways Agency, but the people that we would be marketing to are already within the village, and those who have the closest proximity and who are eligible would have first refusal. And we've got a list, and to your point, we've got a list of 139 people at the moment who are qualified and who'd like to reserve once if it was made available. So in terms of traffic, we also know from the data and from our research that most of them have 1 car, which again, if you're looking at a traditional 4-bed house, you can be looking at 2 or 3 cars. But having said that, we've made lots of parking provision and cycle provision as you'd expect. So in terms of traffic, I think we can say we won't increase it, and they won't be, these are people that are mostly retired, these people in their late 60s plus, they won't be travelling at that peak time. In terms of the green lung, what I would need to do is to share our landscaping approach, but we've actually, and again, you might say that the space being, if someone says that I just don't want the space to have anything on it, what we'll actually be doing is vastly increasing their natural habitats there for local species, increasing the wildlife, and also saving the woodland, which is dying. The woodland along the front is all dying, and we've got the report for that, which is anyone can do. In terms of the neighbours and the turning it down, we're actually on good terms with the neighbours. We've communicated with them over a period of time all around that area, and those immediately adjacent are in favour of the scheme because they understand what we're doing, and they also can see the lengths that we're going to increase the planting and maintain their privacy in the boundary, to the extent that we know that there are some issues with subsidence in that whole area on that estate, and we're looking at how we can help. We don't have to, but we want to. And again, you mentioned the commercial area. We know that flooding is a problem in that area, and that road often floods, and there's people who can't use parts of their gardens in that estate that's adjacent at certain parts of the year. So, and they have units that flood to such an extent that the fire service was called. So what we're doing is we are going to take care of all the ditches. We found the source of the problem. Partly, obviously there's clay, but taking that aside, there's a drain that hasn't been maintained properly in years, which has created an issue for the area, and we'll take care of that. We've put water measures, all kinds of water management. We're going to put a post about that to sort of expand on that throughout the site. And then that detention basin or lake, we've made it into something lovely. We hope that will actually protect the commercial units and the road from flooding, which I think is quite welcome. In terms of the being refused by residents, we did a poll, and again I'll come to your point about Facebook, and we had 64% in favour, and we have published that on our Facebook site, so it is public information. And we put the good, the bad and the ugly, because obviously that leaves 36 who said no, and the no's were to the development principle, not to our scheme. So we do have, and I'll come to Facebook a little bit more, but we have had amazing support from the people that we're targeting, not universally, and you can go online and you can read all of it. Including the names where people, of course there's GDPR, some people use their names, some people don't. So it depends what they choose to do, but most people have used their full names on our Facebook page. Now, in terms of the bulk massive development, yes, the previous scheme it had very large gardens. It wasn't a great design. It did, let me just check this because it's not my area. It did get outline planning permission in 2016, this site, and then there was a reserve matters application in 2019. The officer report recommended permission be granted. Ultimately, it was refused, but the report said it was solely on the grounds of design rather than principle. So this is the only area, when we were looking at Tollesbury, it's the only area where you've got a landowner who's willing to do something specialist, and where there was a plot of land with planning principle, but also which met the Malden Older Persons SPD. We looked at some plots to the west, and again, so we think that this piece of land is going to be built on. It's a question of what. But when we look to the west, that takes you over 1 kilometre away from local amenities, from the marina, and that breaches the Older Persons SPD. So the plots in the west that we looked for would move these people away from the community. So we didn't go there. In terms of timing, we have a very different model. And when we started doing this, we were in the full lockdown. It was the really intensive one. And I do appreciate that. We have been talking to Malden District Council since the very beginning, since last year. And we recognised that we needed to move into the parish, but we weren't, until we knew that we had enough of support that we could make it affordable, because otherwise, because of our local cascade model, we can only sell to local people. It would fail, and our mission basically would begin and end with Tollesbury in this respect. We wanted to get that right. So, but we thought, because I know that Rory Clare's on the call, I can see Rory. Rory engaged with us in May, I think it was, yeah. And we thought, this is great. And Rory was going to bring it back in, but again, that was a climate committee thing, and we were going to talk about that. And we engaged with Emma Stevenson. Again, that's not really appropriate, because Emma wanted to maintain, an unbiased approach, and that's absolutely proper. So I think we kind of thought we were covering that, and we were talking to local businesses. But I can see what you're saying. But I think until we weren't really 100% sure that we could demonstrate that we could meet local demand and that we had enough local demand. So I think
Can I bring the councillors in now, please? Because I don't want to, I think you've obviously presented us with a lot of information, and I think it would be very useful if the councillors could have a chance to question, and they may raise other issues.
Absolutely, of course.
Councillors, could you just sort of signal, and I'll bring you in? Yes, Roy. To start.
Simon, thank you. Helen, thank you very much for the presentation, and indeed for the discussion we had over Facebook some little time ago, which for other people who are not on Facebook, who perhaps didn't know about the conversation, I was asking questions of the plan around the environment, climate change, sustainability, and the extent to which factors that will be of great interest to the village in terms of climate change were being taken into account. That was the sum of my engagement with it. I think it's if I can say, I think the public relations aspect for those who are on Facebook has been very good. Not everybody, of course, is on Facebook, and we've tried very hard with the village through lockdowns as a group of volunteers, keeping in touch with the households that aren't on Facebook. So we're very conscious of that. But Helen, thank you for all of that background. I don't want to take your time now, because I think I've read thoroughly all the documentation. I'm looking forward to tomorrow. It's important that councillors go to that meeting tomorrow with the clarity of all the position and with an open mind to the discussion that we're going to have. So that's it from me, but thank you for this evening.
And just to answer that point, because I understand what you're saying about Facebook, and I know it's quite astonishing how many people are on it, and I've got I can't remember the exact data. We published it on our website when we did the survey report on our website. We actually made a point of saying on the report, there we go, 21% of users of Facebook are over the age of 55. So it's, but again, I know you're either on it or you're not, and So what we did is we went to the Malden Standard proactively, and they ran quite a comprehensive piece, and the Malden Nub picked it up as well. So we thought, okay, that's one way. But I was minded. I wrote letters to local residents because I thought, at COVID and to a vulnerable audience, the last thing I can do is canvass at the door, and also people don't want to receive unwanted bits of paper. Ideally we'd be doing this face to face. It's just the figures just seem to be rising higher and higher. But the good thing about Facebook is, to Simon's point, is that the comments and the quotes, they aren't spurious, and you can go online and you can read them, and a lot of them have got the full names of the people on there, and you can choose to disregard the ones that don't, I guess, but it's all there.
Fine. Okay, thank you. Jolene, you had your...
Hi, Helen.
Hiya.
Just a couple of quick questions, really. Just to clarify, when you say that it's got the local aspect and it's only properties only for local residents, that is specifically just Tollesbury. It doesn't expand out, or it's just specifically for Tollesbury?
It would only expand out to Malden if it wasn't sold to Tollesbury, and there's an exclusivity period, which again is all laid out on our website. But as I said, we've got a pipeline that means we can't meet demand. So we would, at the moment, we've got 139 people registered, and they've provided their details and their eligibility criteria, and we only have 29 dwellings. But it doesn't go beyond Malden. It's a local marketing campaign.
Right. And the other question was, you talked about the cascade model and the 20% discount on market value and the longevity plan for the development. But are there any protections in place to ensure that the properties aren't bought to then rent out, or that are inherited then to family members and then just become a rental property? Or how are you going to ensure that they stay within that criteria?
Yeah, there's a covenant that's placed, like you might have a covenant on a property that says you can't put a caravan on your drive or an aerial on your roof. We've got a covenant that says they have to remain affordable, and they have to remain to this restricted age group and the income bracket. So it's all in the section 106, and we've been working with the legal team at Malden District Council to get that wording absolutely spot on, so they're happy with it. Effectively, it's a charge that's placed on the property, but it doesn't mean anything. It just means that when the paperwork goes through, when someone comes to sell, they have to maintain it as affordable, and they have to meet the criteria. So it's all laid out in a legal framework.
So if say a parent of mine bought one of those properties, passed on and left that property to me, I would have to sell it to a person that met that criteria at the 20% discount?
Yes.
Or I could keep it and rent it out?
If you were to rent it to, and again, this is Malden District Council will be deciding, their legal team will decide what the exact covenant is. But if you were to rent it out to somebody but the lead occupier has to be 60 or above and has to be from the local area. So you have to maintain the integrity of what we're trying to achieve. And it's at the council's discretion, so to maintain the integrity. So they have the ability, if they wanted to, they have oversight. And again, it's exactly how that works is with the council as to what they want it to be. But that's what we want, and that's how it is right now in the planning application.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Any other councillors have any questions that they'd like to ask at this moment in time? Sarah at all? Yes.
Yes, I was just wondering, you said the maintenance charge would be around about £50 a month. That seems incredibly low. 20 years ago, my first flat, I was paying, I think, £1,200, £1,400 for the year. I just wondered, are you able to guarantee that it will start off, round about that figure and stay around about that figure?
We haven't been asked for a guarantee, but I don't think anyone would move in without that certainty. So I guess it's something we need to think about, and I will look to put the wording in, because we are not a profit-driven organisation. I actually have facilities management background myself, so I know that if you outsource the care of properties and landscaping you won't get the personal touch, you won't have the consistency in who comes. And again, we think that we care passionately. And for me, the ability to walk through Salt Meadows or any Lewis and Scott estate and people know who I am, and I'm a local, and to have my head held high and to move my parents in, not that they can because we don't really live there, but to be at that level is absolutely crucial. So the landscaping is crucial to that. We've worked very carefully with Lockhart Garrett to look at the kind of planting that goes in. The way that we're designing, we're actually building to an incredibly high spec. To give you an example, we were looking at a light brick because there's various reasons about the differentiation of the colour for dementia principles that we have to meet, but also for it to be contemporary and to feel like something aspirational and innovative. But we actually realised if we painted the brick, well, how long will that last before that looks pretty rubbish? So that needs to be a special brick that doesn't need maintenance. So everything has to be to the highest spec, inside and out, and all the landscaping. And that, effectively, there is no profit in us maintaining. What we're looking at, because we have other developments in the southeast, because this is where we're from, we can look to share that. We can look at creating local jobs, and we hope the local community will get involved, but we costed it out and it will be part of our commitment.
Okay, and sorry, second question. Where's the indoor swimming pool in the village that has been
Voted.
promised?
The indoor swimming pool?
Yes, that came up on Facebook, and the person who queried was told that, oh yes, there was an indoor swimming pool within a short walk in the village.
There's a Lido. I think I'd have to double check. There's a Lido not that far away.
No, there isn't.
The open air pool.
Yeah, but it's not a Lido, and it's never classed as a Lido.
Oh no, I didn't say I haven't put anything on Facebook. I'd need to double check. I don't know.
I just think that makes a point, really. On Sarah, is there anything else you'd like to say?
No, that's fine.
Okay. Can I just come back, Helen, on a couple of points? As part of the neighbourhood plan, we had to carry out a very in-depth survey. And that survey certainly didn't show that there was 120 odd people wanting retirement accommodation. In actual fact, it showed that within the village at that time, which was approximately 3 years ago, there was only about 6 people on that who actually wanted, and this was carried out independently, not by us. So little bit concerned, but I'll take your
Well, if I could come back to that, if that's the 2017 survey, I know it was 327 households who responded, and I think it was 31% said they had plans to move, and 56% said that the reason they wanted to move was to downsize.
Yeah, I think there is a move to downsize, but then there was a particular what sort of accommodation you were requested, and that wasn't as high as that by any means. And when you look at also the census information about the village, the census information says the over 60s is about 59%, not 70. So I understand where you're coming from on that. There is one question I'd like to ask you. Have you as yet worked out what actual build price you're going to per square metre?
Yes, but that's not my area, because I would suggest that I would need to get one of my colleagues on for that, because that goes beyond my area. I can find it out. I can certainly find it out in time for tomorrow.
The only reason I'm asking is in one sense, I'm an architect. I'm involved with the construction process, and I know what things are costing us at the moment on that. It would just be an interesting factor.
Yeah, absolutely. I can get that for you. No problem.
Emma, would you like to? Have you got any questions at the moment?
So thank you very much, Helen. I'm so sorry that we missed the presentation itself. I don't know, Michelle, if there's any possibility of you've been recording it, and I know that's probably for your own purposes. If I am able to watch it, that would be terrific, but we can talk about that.
Yeah, I think that's possible.
Sorry, we had a family matter that keeps coming back to bite us. Yeah, I have quite a few questions really. So apologies if some of these came up in the presentation. If so, I'm happy to watch it afterwards. I think we mustn't underestimate the impact of traffic. It's all very well saying, oh well, these are retired people and they don't go anywhere, but that isn't quite the case. And actually, if people in the village move into these homes, then their homes will come out onto the open market and will fill with people who will have cars and will drive places. So I think it's a bit disingenuous to say there's not an impact on traffic. So that's just a comment. A question for you, please. You've said that the woodland is dying along the front. Do you just mean the hedge where it runs along the side of the road?
There's a cluster. If you right, the southwest. The southwest. There's a cluster, and then it goes along the front and up the side. And that is category, I think they call it category C. I have got a terrible memory for details like that. But basically, it's got less than 10 years life in it, and it doesn't support much biodiversity. Now, that's me moving into landscaping, which is not my thing. I can't even do my own garden. However, as part of our planning application, you will have seen the landscaping proposals and the species and the maturity of what we're going to do to build up that entire screen and increase the biodiversity in there.
Okay, thank you. You talked about subsidence and helping other people outside this development with subsidence issues. What did you mean by that, please?
Well, I'm not going to mention specific names because I think that would be inappropriate. But there's an issue with, it's not our issue, but we've been talking to local people, and what we're hoping to do is to enrich the area and for our development to be seen as something that's really good for Tollesbury, and part of that is finding out what local people need and how we can help. And so if there's an opportunity with someone who's somewhere around our area who's got an issue and maybe needs some structural buffering and they can't do it themselves, well, we're builders, we can do that. So I won't go into, I think that would be quite unfair for me to go into specifics, but we could do that offline. But we basically want to help people with their issues that aren't related to our development, but which we could help. And I was talking.
It sounds. I think it sounds lovely, but it's the sort of thing that could be used as a promotional sort of strap line, really. But in practice, if I've got subsidence, heaven forbid, I ring my insurance company. They're going to be very specific as to how I resolve it, and I would claim on my insurance, and I probably have to pay in excess of £1,000 or something, or maybe even more. So the help that anyone actually wants is, I'd like that £1,000, please. And that's what people will want, because their insurance company will tie them as to what their solutions are. So it sounds lovely, but I'm not really convinced.
It probably sounds like it's not that that probably sounds like it's been overstated. It's more a question of there are water courses that we need to manage as throughout that area, and some of the strategies that we're going to employ, which are in our planning application, would benefit local people and local companies through proper management.
There is one issue in the village that if you'd come and actually seriously wanted to talk to us sooner, then there may have been something that could help substantially, that would be a reality rather than, as I think Emma is saying, and I tend to agree at the moment, the road heaven is paved with gold, but sometimes it doesn't work on that. But there is one issue that probably would have quite a good impact in the village if you sat down and talked to us on that. Emma, have you got any more questions?
Please, if I may, I'd like to know exactly which drain it is that hasn't been maintained, please. Would you be able to message me that?
Absolutely.
Thank you. You've talked about, this is all to do with flooding and drainage and so on, that you might be able to alleviate pressures on potential flood risks. I'd really be interested to see those studies. So if I looked at the predictions for flooding over the next 50, 100 years, if this development comes with your backing, what impact will that have on the predictions? If you're going to tell me that a 1 metre rise is going to disappear, a 1 metre sea level rise is going to disappear, I'd be really interested to see those figures. I don't know what
Well,
alleviation you might provide.
the site, let me see if I've got the data to hand. The site is not on a floodplain, and the site isn't at risk of flooding, and it meets all the criteria. And we've had all of the water management reports, which are part of the planning application. So if I'm sure there's no issue with me sending those to you. And we're also, so that would probably be the best thing, because then you can see that water won't be an issue. We're just talking about water that cascades across the site from the housing estate, and it affects the road and the commercial buildings. But we think we can deal with an awful lot of that through proper maintenance and through the measures that we're taking. So if I send you those reports, but there is no flooding issue on that area.
I think you need to be slightly careful there, because looking at your flood risk assessment, a third of the site is in high risk flooding area.
And that's the water detention basin. So what we've done is we've taken it, we fully accept that, so we've turned it into...
I can understand that, but you don't say that. You say there's a pond, and then there's some sort of area beyond. If that area is a water retention area, then it's going to be a bit damp, a bit marshy, a bit all sorts of things in there, and not very usable. But it can be overcome. But what I'm trying to say to you is that when you look at your own information, a number of the units are either just on the high risk floodplain or in zone 2 rather than zone 3 on that. It's not tidal flooding, it's surface water flooding on that. And that area is prone to flooding already at the moment.
We've gone above and beyond on the flooding, and we would contest that none of the units are on a high risk floodplain, but we'd have to look at the reports together to do that with our flood agency. But effectively we've created the detention basin, and I get what you're saying. We've actually made it excessively deeper than it needs to be around the social heart, which is why it will always be full. Because we know that otherwise you could have a social heart at some time of the year, beautiful view, and the rest of it not. And the rest of it has been planted with wildflowers. So if it ever needed it, in excessive, we've got uncertain climate conditions, as we know, that it can take it. But it mostly won't be needed, but it's there. And then we put extra division, we put crates underground. So we've got all kinds of things that we're actually putting into a water report, because I've got quite a lot of comments on this on Facebook. We're actually going to be publishing it this week.
I think, Helen, I'm just looking at your plan, figure 5.3, which certainly shows a number of the dwellings either in the red zone or the amber zone.
I think we'd have to look at that in a technical meeting with our flood guys, because that's not as we see it. We don't see anything in the high flood.
But anyway, I just think what I'm sort of coming around to is this was one of the reasons why in the past the parish council have always came to the conclusion that it's not the right site on that. Any more questions, Emma?
And to that point, I can see why traditional developers wouldn't want to do it, because they wouldn't be invested in the margin loss, I suppose, that the proper management would entail. But we actually welcome, the opportunity to have the woodland and to have the water, because it's better for the dementia principles that we're doing with Sterling.
Yeah.
Sorry, Emma.
No, you're fine, thank you. I don't really understand why we think that this plot is closer to the shops than the plot identified in the draft neighbourhood plan, because it just isn't. It's these sorts of statements that come out, people will just believe them, they'll take them as gospel. And really, it needs to be truthful. We shouldn't be seeing wrong statements like that.
Well, we might be talking at cross purposes. So I was talking about we looked at the plots to the west of the development, to the west of the village, and it was exceeding it was going to over 1 kilometre, which meant that it was exceeding the older person's SPD. Now, if there are if there are places that you would rather we looked, or you say in addition to we need more here, then that would be great. But we haven't seen those when we did the analysis. But again, that's something we could pick up and
I think Simon might like to say something on that.
I think exactly the same point, Emma. I checked it out, and that statement doesn't hold a lot of water at all. It's probably one of the longest distances away from the centre of the village. And if you'd have come and talked to us earlier, there certainly are sites a lot closer into the centre of the village on that. As Emma said, it's slightly difficult because I get the sneaky suspicion, and I could be wrong here, that it's the lot of your information is being based on Facebook and what people say. And given that we've done a lot of work on our own neighbourhood plan, which isn't made, so it doesn't have a huge amount of weight, but it is a process we've been going through, that the walk up the hill into the centre of the village, there certainly are sites, and one of the sites we've allocated in our neighbourhood plan is certainly a lot closer.
We measured, it's 10 minutes walk from our site to the village shops.
Yeah, the site we're anticipating or could have used will probably be within the doctor's surgery 2 minutes on that. Probably you just weren't looking in the right place. That's all. I'm not saying on that, but I think there is an issue there that you do need to slightly clarify, please.
I can put that in the follow-up, definitely.
Yeah. Emma, anything else?
Yes, sorry, a couple more. So you've talked about this covenant, and I understand you're working on that with the district council, which presumably will come at me from another angle through the council. I haven't heard about that yet. But in principle, to what extent are covenants enforceable? I mean, we all know somebody who's got a caravan on their front drive that shouldn't have, but who's going to enforce it?
But it's fully enforceable. It's a legal requirement from the solicitors. It's embedded in the sale process. So the properties can't be sold unless that criteria is met. And we have some of the sort of leading legal counsellors who are helping us draft that paperwork and helping us with work with legal counsel at Malden. And it's fully funded by the sale of the purchase, so there's no burden on Malden Council. And so it's absolutely watertight.
Okay, thank you. And my last comment, this isn't something I've witnessed myself. I was kind of hoping that Harry might be here tonight. We have a gentleman who lives in the village who loves his drains. I'm back onto drains again. Just next to your site is the sewerage works. We regularly have sewerage flowing out of the drain. I've not seen it in person, but I have seen photographs.
Yeah.
The sewerage pours out of a drain right next to your site, and if you ask Anglian Water or whatever the company's called, I think they'll just go, oh, no, we see no problem, it's not there. There is a problem. And I'm wondering if you were aware of that and what you might do about that.
It's not been picked up because what we've done quite unusually, because we've done our full homework in advance of putting in our application. So in our planning application, our outline application, we put in full reports, including all of the ecology and the analysis, and there's no evidence of that. And I'm surprised because we're only mildly closer than the nearest settlement, the main settlement that we're adjacent to. And when we've spoken to those guys, they've not reported anything, and there's nothing on record. And we're 2 fields away from that site, which is on the coast. So I'd need to verify that to take that one, because that's not come up in anything. We've been very thorough.
I think again, Helen, I'm not. I'm sort of moving into becoming a Tollesbury resident. I've been here for about 35 years on that, and I think I've seen that happen twice, at least. So I think again, I would support Emma in saying there has been some major issues down there that are still not properly resolved at the moment. But again, it's not to say they can't be resolved.
Yeah, I think we'll have to do some definite. If you could send me anything, because presumably the council or the parish council will have gathered some sort of report on sewage leaking into near a settlement. So that would be something we could.
We have been talking to AWA over this, but of course, when these sort of things happen, it's torrential rain and flooding, and people aren't venturing out. But I can say from visual experience that I've seen it, and I know Emma, there'll be other people like Harry who lives next door, have seen it, that issue. And I have to say the AWA have been trying to resolve it.
It's just-
on that. But the
We've got
sewage
really-
treatment,
Yeah.
and of course the other interesting thing is 5 years ago we were told that the sewage treatment plant was at capacity and no more dwellings could be built. And basically we've probably had about at least 10 to 15 infill sites, and then now your site is another 29.
We have got the report that says that we are within infrastructure, that there's ample capacity for our development. We've got the official report for that. But as to the sewage aspect, that would really concern me, because I know the residents quite well, the neighbours, because we've built relationships and around the whole site, and it's not been mentioned, so that's not something we would tolerate. So we need to get on that.
I
and see
understand
the data.
that, but of course we also know who the neighbours are in the village. So we'll just leave it like that, I think, at the moment on that. I'd like to open it up now to members of the public. Any other members of the public? Yes, Elaine, I can see your hands. Jean, I can see yours on that. Elaine, would you like to go first?
Okay, thank you, Simon, and thank you, Helen. Excuse my voice because I've got a bit of a cold. I did respond to Facebook. My concern, or my question really, is integration with the rest of the village, because you seem to be proposing retirement area only, exclusive, whereas this is quite an old-fashioned village where we all mix together, we all help each other. It's a very small village, and we wouldn't want to lose that. So my question is this area that you're proposing completely private? Is it going to be accessed from other members of the public, in particular this social area you're talking about, which I presume is like a public area, like a public hall or something, and also the woodland? Is that going to be accessed by other members of the public, or is this whole area going to be completely private? And if so, is the woodland area to be maintained as part of the service charge that you're proposing for the development, or once you've done the work on the woodland, if it's going to be left for the parish council to maintain or some other body to maintain?
So to answer your
thank
point,
you very much.
Thank you for your question. And so it will be open, and integration is important, and that's why that site adjacent to the community within 10 minutes walking distance and also able to access the marina is important. And so it will be open. The woodland walk will be open. There's a children's play area on the site as well to encourage people to integrate, and also for grandchildren, so we've got an age integration. And in terms of, let me just think, we are beholden for in perpetuity to manage that woodland to maintain net biodiversity gain. So we will be legally bound to protect and maintain that there will be no burden upon the parish council for the woodland, and it will be open. So we're not creating a gated community or anything like that. It's going to be secure, and we're working to achieve gold standard in security, and it has natural surveillance, but it won't be private, siloed, siphoned off.
Yeah, thank you.
Simon, can I just come back on that? So are you saying that the maintenance of that woodland is going to be paid for by the residents as part of their service charge?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Jean, you had your hand up.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, can.
Yeah.
Yep.
Right. I live in a 2-bedroom bungalow in the village that had planning permission for people over 50 when I bought it. And when I bought it, I was 47. Nobody said I couldn't buy it. The builder did say to me, you're supposed to be over 50. I said, well, travelling up to London every day makes you look like you're over 50, so that's okay. And I got, I bought it, so it was fine. Now, the bungalow next door to me has just been bought by somebody who's probably, I'm not sure, but probably in their 30s. It doesn't mean to say that, I'm not going to object to it, but obviously, when this planning permission was given for these bungalows, they were supposed to be people over 50. if in your development you have a lady, say in her 70s, and she has her daughter come and live with her because she needs some help or whatever, and she's 50, and then her poor old mum dies, are you going to say you're going to evict that person?
Because she can't live there. The lead occupant must be above 60 years old, and that is in perpetuity. And we've actually made life really difficult for ourselves. I mean, if you were looking to make money through development, you wouldn't do what we've done. We have put a hard line in all our documentation and our legal documentation, to such an extent that Malden Council actually said, "Are you sure you want to take that line? You don't want it to be too restrictive." And they haven't made it any tougher, because if our developments in 10 years' time, 5 years' time, have younger people and the integrity is spoiled, or the way and people's experiences are negative, we will just die as a company. We will never sell another property. They have to be examples of how much better things can be for people who fall into that bracket. And if they don't, then Lewis and Scott will be history. So it has to work. And we've made it that it's not a question of trust, it's in the legalities.
But what happens if, as I say, somebody, as their daughter or son or whatever, come and live with them, then the person who actually owns the property leaves that property to that person, and they carry on living there because they've got nowhere else to go? That is their home. They've been living there for 5 years looking after mum or dad. Are you saying that they're going to be evicted, or they're forced to sell?
They can't stay. The lead occupant can't be below 60. But we aren't monsters, and we aren't going to pursue a social good at the expense of people. And so we understand situations can be difficult. Now we intend that there will be a relationship between whoever owns that site, whoever manages that site, and the people. So we will hopefully know when something like that happens, and we will get involved. But yeah, they can't stay. Otherwise, what would happen is within one generation, it would no longer be an older person's scheme. So that would have to be managed. And there are going to be difficult situations. And as a company, we're going to have to think about how we support them and who we work with. But we're talking to the NHS, we're talking to central government. We've got lots of bodies who are very interested in what we're doing and can see the benefits. And I think we would have to be thinking through how we can support that family. But no, they have to be 60 years old.
Okay, thank you, Helen. Andrew, I've seen your hand up, and then Emma. So over to you, Andrew.
Thank you, Helen. Thank you, Simon. Let me ask a couple of questions. First of all, I think it's very noble for you not to be monitored by, be motivated by a profit, and I think that seems a bit of an odd statement to make. I think I don't think you're a registered charity, are you? So I find that very difficult that you're not motivated by profit. And I'd also like to point out that you mentioned about not outsourcing some of the things you're doing, and it was not being able to trust some of the things that are outsourced. But aren't you outsourced? Don't you work for another company? You don't work directly for Lewis and Scott? Strategic Insight?
That is, so 2 points there. So we aren't a registered charity, and there's various reasons for that, which our financial guy would have to speak to. But we are registering as a B Corp, which means we are ethically transparent, and we have to meet all those obligations, which are quite stringent. In terms of being outsourced, I'm not outsourced. I'm one of the directors of Lewis and Scott, and we're just bringing our team together. Strategic Insight Consulting is basically, it's my banner that I work under if I do consulting for people. So you're on my LinkedIn.
Well, according to Companies House, there are two directors, Kerry Jane Scott and Robert John Scott.
That's Rob and his wife, and then we're growing the team, and we're just going through that at the moment. But it's a transition with a new company. But yeah, I'm one of the directors, and we're just waiting for that to go through.
So you don't work full time for Strategic Insight then?
No.
Not like LinkedIn says. So that's something on social media that we shouldn't believe.
Yeah. And if you look, you can see that I've done some consulting work with Aura, but it's...
Okay. I mean, the other thing, I think I've left messages on Facebook and had some interesting conversations on there, and it was very noticeable that the sewage works was not even mentioned, and it's certainly a lot quicker to walk to the sewage works than it is to the centre of the village.
I replied back to the sewage work question directly, and you'll see from the posts. So I actually wrote those responses, and
yes,
Yeah.
when that northeast wind blows, yes, that's nice down there.
And I also, if you look at the survey that we published in the last few days, because we just got the results, the sewage works was mentioned, so I addressed that directly and put that up as a concern. So we're not hiding from the treatment plants.
But you didn't, first of all. I pointed it out, and it didn't appear on Facebook until then you addressed it. So I think there seems to be, to me as a villager, you use national data to try and address local issues. And I think some of the data you've used, you refer to these national figures about percentages of retired people want to do this and whatever, and that doesn't necessarily apply to local issues. And I think Simon pointed that out to you with our social survey that's taken place only a few years ago. And I think, there are a lot of holes in what you're doing, and it's very good PR, and all very nice and smiley and touchy and whatever, but there's something that just doesn't feel right. And I think there's a lot of people in the village at the moment feel that, it's almost a bit too utopian.
And I get that, and I think one of our biggest obstacles, which is quite bizarre for me, is that, too good to be true, and I think that is the case. And I think there's one where I would counter that is by saying everything that I'm saying that is material is actually in the documentation. It's in the section 106. We're legally bound. There is no scope to renege on any of the commitments we're making. In terms of the, can I just reply to your, in terms of the data, the poppy data is regional, and we've used the same data that the Malden Older Persons SPD uses, and then what we've done is we've built an Experian platform which takes it down to a Tollesbury level, so we can share all that with the parish council, and we are doing so with Malden District Council, and it's in our planning application, but it's all Tollesbury specific. And then we also have the 139 people who have said we need this and we want it, and can we sign up? And I get that. I understand why you'd be suspicious. And if you remember when I started, it was the "we are different" is the drum that everyone bangs. And I guess what I can do is, I think if you see that Malden Council and hopefully the parish council look at the documentation and the ironclad case to deliver what we've said we will deliver, and look at the data which is all laid out, I think that's the best I can do until I actually build it for you.
Yeah, I mean, I've read a lot of the documents, a lot of them are repetitive, but I've been through, the main documents and started to sift through some of the others. But I've read it all, and it still doesn't ring true to me.
That's on me. That means we need to be clearer. So I need to get that and take that and do something
Andrew,
with it.
have you got any other questions?
I have, but I think I'll be here all night if I did. Unless something else happened.
Emma, you've got your hand up.
Thank you, Simon. So underlying all this, it's a development for retirement people, and I need to keep an open mind, and I will keep an open mind, but I am really, really wary of any group of people sort of having their own specific homes. It feels, there's something that feels wrong about that. I'm not understanding why there's a need for that. I'm not saying there isn't a need for properties that are suitable for certain people, but why put them all into a kind of a reverse ghetto? And because of this family issue that we've just been looking at tonight, I'm very, very conscious of a lot of elderly people living in one place and the security for them, because they're a very good target. They're a really very good target. If everyone gets to know, oh, the people down there, they don't know what's going on, you can go and walk into their house and take something, that word will get out. And I'm just not really understanding why we think we need to bring more older people and increase our age group, our age range in Tollesbury even higher.
So it's that latter point, was that you don't see why we should increase the age range higher, or?
Well, Tollesbury has an older population already. Why would we want to artificially increase it further by building 29 homes that we're only going to be able to put older people into?
Oh, I can deal with that one right away, in that we won't be increasing it, we'll be making the population younger, because these people already live in the village, and so their homes would be made available for, I don't want to generalise on who would have them, but people who would be more buying a 4-bedroom house or 3-bedroom house. But to address your points, that as opposed to the ghetto aspect, we need to create homes that are affordable. We know that in Tollesbury, we know what the market values are of the homes, and we know that if we stick to the current model, that the homes aren't being built, and the current single-storey properties available in Tollesbury and for the last 18 months have exceeded mostly the values that people can afford. So they don't move because they can't afford to. So we need to come up with a different way of living. And what we've done is we've changed the way that we design the house. And what we've done is we've said, okay, instead of paying for the whole garden, we're going to put your properties in 4 acres. So you get the natural landscape, you get the outdoor space, you get the community without the isolation, but you get that. So it's ideally, if we were to go back to first principles, housing would be built, particularly in these sorts of areas where we've got an ageing population, and that is local data that shows that. But we would build it all interspersed with younger people's housing. But we are so far down the road, and these houses aren't being met, which is a national problem. The reason I've been talking about national problems, I've been trying to stress that this isn't to lay any blame on any local authority, on any local plan. That what we're looking at in Tollesbury is a nationwide thing, and I guess that's why I was referencing that. So we're not looking at ghetto, we're looking for people to support each other. We're hoping that people from 60 up to 80 and plus will want to live there. So we have got different age groups. That's not one group of people. That would be like putting teenagers and 40-year-olds together. In terms of security, we are working with Essex Police and Secured by Design to get their Gold Award. And Stirling University have praised the natural surveillance that the orientation of the houses creates. And then we're going to be working with Essex Police to go their extra mile and make sure they're absolutely locked down. I don't see this as a magnet for thieves. So I don't think that's going to be an issue any more than anywhere else. But if someone was to come in with ill intent, they would be spotted. So there will be systems. And again, that's not me trying to create another line but they will basically meet the Essex Police gold standard for security. And people will be able to look after each other, and it's part of creating a community that cares about each other, a small community.
Thank you, Helen. Bob, you had your hand up.
Thank you, Simon, and apologies for late arrival, Helen. Just a couple of points, please. You referred to the Burnham and Malden standard in terms of promoting the development. Do you know what the circulation is for that paper in Tollesbury?
It's going to be fairly low. I just knew it was the only one. So we also went to the Malden Nub, but I know there isn't. I mean, it was obviously, I'm not thinking that local press has the reach it once had, but it was just to demonstrate, and from their website as well, that we understood that not everyone's on Facebook. So I'm not saying that was a panacea, and also it wasn't a promotion. They could have gone either way. They could have torn us to shreds because it was an editorial piece.
So you didn't foresee the need to do a mail shot to the villagers who are not digitally enabled?
We didn't think it was particularly appropriate because of code restrictions, and also it was, do we really want to be putting things into people's properties when they might be worried about them, and that might cause anxiety?
Okay. Second point is your application to Malden District Council says that the pre-application letter from Malden to yourselves would be following later. How much later is later? Because we're getting very close to the 30th of September, which is the cut-off date, and that pre-application letter has yet to be published.
That's in their gift. So we do know that Malden Council have an issue with resource at the moment, and we are working with them and doing as much as we can, because we know that times are quite, they're quite lean on resources, but it's not within my control. So the case officer is actually on leave at the moment, so I couldn't ask that question until later this week.
Is that something that could be provided to Simon before tomorrow night's parish council meeting?
I don't know because it's not in my control. I could pursue the council.
But it's with your organisation somewhere.
No, it's with the council.
No, the pre-application letter from the council to yourself.
It's not with. No, it's not with us. It's with the council.
And the comment on distances. The bus stop is approximately 730 metres from the site entrance, not 450 metres.
We have measured it, so I would dispute that. But again, I'm sure I need to go onto Google Earth Live to demonstrate it. But I
think you've been using a wrong tape measure there.
Yeah, or you better have a complaint with Google Earth.
Yeah, exactly.
The only other comment is on the flood item. Which I think Simon raised, in respect of the next 100 years or more. Your documentation makes no reference to the recent survey that was undertaken in terms of assessing the risk of flooding in the event of problems with the seawall in the area around the bottom part of Woodroffe Road. Comments to make as the results of that survey is yet to be published and won't be published until next year.
Oh, so it hasn't been published yet, that survey?
No.
So, okay, so...
Published until next year.
Okay, so we've used all the information and we have, we've got a very reputable flood water management company to do our reports. So we've done the full reports. And so we've been satisfied and we've had that sign off. Now, that's not my area and I'd be talking out of turn to talk about the reports. But they're in our planning application, and if there's a survey, I'll make that a point. I don't know how I'd access it, but I can certainly find out because, of course, if anything compromises our development, we'd want to know about it.
And that was information that was public domain in the village back in 2019.
In which case it must have been considered, so I need to go back so I could answer that accurately.
Okay. Thank you, Bob. I'm just conscious that it is 8:30. I'm very happy to continue if people want to do that. Jean, I've just seen your hand up. I've got 2 other points I'd like to ask if that is the case after that, Jean, but...
Very quick one. Helen, you say about this maintenance charge, are you going to have it written into your agreement that it cannot go up, say, more than 5% a year or something like that, which is what I had when my mother was in an old people's home, well, residential home, that, we knew what the fees were, we knew how much it could possibly go up each year. Are you going to have some sort of thing like that so that it doesn't ever get out of people's control? Because old people don't necessarily have any further income than what their pension is.
No, their pension doesn't rise.
Index linked, great. If it's not index linked, they've had it, but they do need to have that safety net that it's going to be controlled.
No, I absolutely agree. And my in-laws, for example, are in rented accommodation and their pension doesn't stretch. So something like the car goes wrong, there is no recourse. There's no money to pay for that. And if one of them, passes away, then that pension becomes halved. And that puts them on below £15,000 a year. So we completely understand that. That's a level of detail we haven't got to because we're still at the Section 106 level with the council, and you work through the stages. You don't move forward to another level of detail unless you pass the major hurdles. But absolutely, that's the kind of thing we would put in to give people peace of mind. So we're not there yet, but we would do that.
Thank you. Helen, 2 questions. If the parish council wanted to go and have a look at a development that you have already built, would that be possible to do?
At this stage, no, because we've got Tollesbury and Housestead that are first developments, and we've got 2 more close behind. It might be that Housestead gets developed first. I think it's most likely to be Tollesbury.
Okay, so you're a very new company.
Yes, we're a very new company. However, Rob Scott has the owner, CEO, has an extensive track record of development, multiple developments, and the directors that we're now bringing into the team all have excellent credentials. And again, that's something we could make available. We talked to the council,
The company is changing quite radically, but it's all very, very new.
It is new, yes. I mean, the concept itself, it's been like 5 years in the making. And if you look at some of the assets we created, like talking to Nigel Appleton, who's one of the lead authorities for local authorities and central government, he's talked about how he and Rob have been working on the model and the needs assessment
I understand that.
for a long time.
On that. The second thing, and it's quite a little trivial thing really, but I don't see on the plan any children's play area.
It's going on there. It hasn't been put on the plan yet because it hasn't been spec'd.
Okay.
But it's in the writing. It's a written commitment, but it's not been spec'd.
But it's not in the plan, not on the drawings. And secondly, again, the community hub is shown on the plan, but it doesn't, and its roof plan doesn't bear any resemblance to the actual elevations that you sent us on that. So again, slight I will answer to that point, because the video that you've seen is an accurate render of the plans done in the CAD drawing using the render program. So it is actually, if it doesn't look the same, then it's going to be because it's a trick of the light. Now we are actually looking at the social hub because it's been... I think that is being a little bit, pushing the point. I know and I can read plans, and your building has a conical roof, pitched 4 ways, and your plans show something completely different from that for the hub building.
Well, I'd have to go back to that, because that would mean that an error had been made. So I would need to check that. But
please do. I'm just pointing it out to you at the moment on that. The first opportunity we will be considering the plan, and obviously this is a major development. So we're into a 13-week decision-making process by Malden, I'm assuming, at the moment. You did say somewhere along the line that it was an outline, but I thought it was a full. Can you just confirm?
That's me using language too casually. It's a full planning application.
It is a full planning permission. That's fine on that, because that's what I thought it was on that. We will obviously discuss this for the first time tomorrow. I don't know what the outcome will be on that. And also I think because it's a major application, we might have a discussion and might even push it back a month so we can check information, and also for you to provide new information on that, because otherwise we'll be making a decision on information that may be changing on that. So I'm conscious of sort of time now, but has anybody else got any burning questions that we'd like to put to Helen? Yes, Emma, I can see your hand. Do you want to have a go, Emma?
Thank you. Yes, I really would like to come back to your comment, Helen, that somehow putting retirement homes in Tollesbury is going to lower, I think you said, is going to lower the average age of people in Tollesbury. Is that what you said? And can you explain that?
Not the average age. I mean, I have to think about that one. Basically, the people who would move to these properties are already in Tollesbury. So
if they are. So if they're not, what will actually happen is that maybe 9 people from Tollesbury might move in. I'm just making numbers up here, there's no evidence for this, but 20 people might come in from the outside. So yes, 9 existing people from Tollesbury might move in and their homes might get occupied by younger people, but the other people won't. And I'm not seeing any evidence that there are 29 people in Tollesbury who will move locally to these homes.
Well, we have 139 people qualified and registered with full names, addresses, contact details who want to reserve off plan. And that's within Tollesbury Village. And then if we, as the marketing plan, which is part of a legal document shows, we would then only go to Malden. So to give you an indication, so people from London, for example, or even Colchester won't be coming in and reducing the age limit. So then it comes down to who would buy the properties that were freed up if those families decided to come and live in Salt Meadows.
So the people who are living in Tollesbury, let's say that there are 29 of them and they all move within Tollesbury, they'll take advantage of this great offer of affordable homes. But will they though? Because then they'll sell their property at full market price and they'll be the ones benefiting from it. So what's to stop that?
There's a covenant that prevents them selling at full market price. So it's on our website and it's in our discounted home ownership model, which is what we've created. And it's the only model that lets people have freehold without having to pay rent. So effectively, you can only sell with 80%, with 20% discount, but you benefit from any gain in equity as you would with any property. So you can't buy it on the Monday and flip it on the Friday and cash in.
No, I'm talking about them selling their existing home in Tollesbury.
Oh, sorry, I
Full
misunderstood.
market price. So they'll take advantage of the whatever, like we all would if we're buying a house, we're going to pay as little as we can for it, obviously. But then they're going to sell their property at full market price.
Yeah.
So they'll take advantage of the offer that you're putting on the table, as people would.
Yeah, and what we've seen, and if I could just answer that one, what we've seen is the house prices, because we've got the Experian data about what the house prices are. The people who would qualify, they're eligible, so they have at or below average the retiree income for the east of England. They're not living in properties that are very, very expensive. There's not going to be a huge delta. We've seen that there is the opportunity for equity release, but these aren't wealthy people. So they're not going to suddenly become incredibly cash rich. What we hope is that they can release some equity for a better lifestyle, because we're hoping they're going to be living in Salt Meadows for 30, 40 years.
I think obviously, yeah, I think there is somewhere a slight mismatch from what the village perceives and knows to your view of what is happening on that, which is understandable on that. So I think we'll just have to sort of take that on board, and obviously we'll come back to you on that. Any other questions at the moment? Yes, Jean.
Very
And then
quickly,
Elaine.
what happens if your company, because it's very new and a lot of companies go broke in the first 5 years of being incorporated, if your company went into liquidation, what happens to this whole scheme?
Well, it's freehold, so people haven't paid a lease. So they would have all the rights of freehold, and then the council has a controlling interest to maintain the affordable housing, but that's all self-funding. But effectively, it's freehold.
Okay, thank you. Elaine.
Thank you, Simon. Just a very quick question of Helen. As a new company, why have you chosen Tollesbury for this? You're saying it's one of the first that you've done. Is that correct?
Yeah,
So
and I
why
think
Tollesbury?
it's familiar to us. I mean, I spent a lot of my childhood at Tollesbury Marina, so I know it really well. And Rob grew up here as well. And our house did similarly. It's also where we have connections, and we know landowners who share our values and are interested, because it's quite a lot for a landowner to say that they'll take part in something like this and not go for the big 4-bed houses. So you have to have the right people, you have to have the right land. We're looking for areas where there's not the provision. So we did an analysis, which Malden District Council accepted, that there's under provision in this area. And in fact, it's everywhere. It's not a Tollesbury issue or a Malden issue, it's an everywhere issue. And what's needed is more specialist housing for the middle market. And so and this is an area, and again, we're here, it's local to me, so I know it well.
Yeah. Helen, you might not want to answer this, and I fully understand on that. Have you agreed, or has the company agreed an option with the landowners?
Yeah, we have an option with the landowner, subject to
Yeah.
planning permission.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know
That is
why,
to
maybe I'm not
purchase-
supposed to answer that, but there we go, I don't know not to.
Okay, that's fine. Any other questions? I think no. Emma, your hand is still up, but are you on that?
Would it help help if because I've made notes and obviously we've got a recording, would it help if I collated some feedback that, because all this information exists in various places, and maybe if I were to simplify and put it all together, it might help? I don't know if I could do that by tomorrow, but I certainly could do it.
That might be useful on that, but obviously we're going to have to then go through that information and test, how robust it is on that before we make a decision on that. So yes, I mean, in essence, I don't think we've got a certain limited period of time to reply to Malden District Council as a consultee, so we've got to be a bit careful about that on that, because I think the principle of some retirement homes, I think the village would be really quite open to on that. As I said, the only problems that you have are that it's in the wrong place at the moment, and it's been in the wrong place for quite some time in terms of that piece of land. But having said that, things do change on that, and the planning situation continues to evolve, so it's not a static situation on that, and obviously we're all aware of that. Yes, I mean, I think the Parish Council would be very happy to continue the debate if you wish to.
Yeah.
On that, and we do thank you for coming to the meeting, for dealing with our questions on that. So is everybody happy that I now say thank you, Helen, and goodbye, and really close the meeting? I mean, it is published on the website on the Parish Council tomorrow's meeting, so people can come and attend that as members of the public, etc. But I think thank you for the information that you've given to us on that, and obviously the village and the Parish Council will deliberate and come to some form of decision in the near future.
Okay, I appreciate everyone's time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So just to everybody else, thank you again for attending. I hope it's been very useful and that it's clarified some of the points and some of the concerns and some of the positive aspects as well, because there are quite a lot of positive aspects to the proposal on that. So I think, Michelle, if we can close the meeting, and might see I'll certainly see all the councillors tomorrow evening, and maybe some of the members of the public as well. So thank you very much, and good night, everybody.
No, thank you. Bye.
Good night.
Thank you.